A millionaire has just stepped out of a bakery when he hears a timid voice. "Sir, would you trade your cake for these shoes?" Shocked, he turns to see a little girl, no more than 7, holding a pair of worn-out shoes. He finds it odd and is about to walk away, but then he notices the desperation in her eyes. What he does next leaves the girl completely stunned. Autumn painted the streets in gold as Richard Sterling adjusted the cuff of his Italian shirt and pushed open the glass door of Le Ciel Pâtisserie. The aroma of vanilla and French chocolate enveloped his $5,000 suit as he observed, with cold eyes, the display case filled with pastries that cost more than many people's monthly rent. At 42, the real estate magnate had built an empire on foundations of determination and calculated indifference. "Aid the red velvet cake to go, Mr. Sterling," the attendant announced with excessive reverence, holding out a gold leaf box adorned with satin ribbons. Richard gave a curt nod, leaving a $100 bill on the marble countertop without waiting for the change. Every one of his movements exuded haste and importance, as if the entire world should adjust to the rhythm of his multi-million-dollar deals. The afternoon was warm for October, and dry leaves danced in whirlwinds across the cobblestone streets of the city's most affluent neighborhood. Richard was walking toward his black Mercedes when something made him stop. A small voice, almost a whisper, reached his ears, which were accustomed only to the praise of subordinates and negotiations in climate-controlled boardrooms. "Sir, would you be willing to trade?" He turned slowly, his brow furrowed. There, near an ornate lamppost, stood a girl of no more than 8. Her brown hair was unkempt, her clothes were too big for her fragile frame, and her bare feet stood in brutal contrast to the sophisticated surroundings. In her small, dirty hands, she held a pair of men's brown dress shoes, clearly used and salvaged from the trash. "Trade what for?" Richard asked impatiently, glancing around to see if anyone was watching the embarrassing situation. The girl swallowed hard, her dark eyes shining with a mixture of hope and fear. "Your cake for the shoes, sir. They're good shoes, just a little worn. My little brother is really hungry, and I thought maybe—" Her voice trailed off, becoming almost inaudible. Richard felt something strange stir in his chest, a sensation he hadn't experienced in years. It was as if a dormant part of his soul had been prodded by those innocent eyes, which stared at him with a disarming vulnerability. "Don't be ridiculous," he muttered, taking a step back. "These shoes aren't even worth $10. The girl lowered her head, and Richard saw a single tear trace a path down her grimy cheek. "I know, sir, but it's all I have to offer." For a moment, the tycoon was frozen. His rational mind screamed at him to move on, to ignore this child as he always did with the panhandlers he encountered on the streets. But something in the girl's desperate sincerity completely disarmed him. She wasn't just begging, she was offering everything she owned in exchange for food for someone she loved. "Wait here," he said abruptly, spinning on his heel and marching back into the patisserie. The attendant greeted him with surprise. "Forget something, Mr. Sterling. I want 6 cupcakes, the best you have," he said, pulling out his wallet again, and put them in a sturdy bag. 5 minutes later, Richard emerged from the shop carrying a bag with Belgian chocolate, strawberry and vanilla cupcakes. The girl was still in the same spot, now sitting on the curb, hugging the old shoes as if they were a treasure. "Here," he said, holding out the bag. "These are for you and your brother." The girl's eyes widened so much Richard thought she might faint. "But what about the shoes?" "Keep them." She jumped up from the curb so quickly she nearly tripped, and before Richard could react, her thin little arms wrapped around him in a tight hug. "Thank you, thank you, thank you," she repeated, her voice choked with emotion. When she pulled away, there were tears of joy on her face. "My name is Luna, sir, Luna Smith, and my brother's name is David. He's going to be so happy." Before Richard could answer, Luna was already running down the sidewalk, clutching the bag to her chest. He watched her stop across the street, where an even smaller boy was sitting on a wooden crate. The joy in her voice echoed through the afternoon. "David, look what I got." Richard Sterling stood there for a long time, watching the two siblings share the cupcakes with a pure happiness he had never experienced. Something had changed irreversibly inside him, and for the first time in decades, he had no idea what to do next. Richard couldn't get the image of the siblings out of his mind during the entire board of directors meeting. Sitting in his genuine leather chair, watching the profit projection charts on the state-of-the-art screen, his concentration was completely fragmented. The director's words reached him like a distant echo, while his thoughts returned again and again to those dark eyes full of hope. "Richard, do you approve the acquisition of the South End development?" asked Helena Vance, his business partner of 15 years, noticing his unusual distraction. "What? Oh, yes, approved," he mumbled, signing the documents without his usual meticulous analysis. Helena exchanged a worried glance with the others present. Richard Sterling never approved an $80 million investment without questioning every single detail. When the meeting finally ended, Richard dismissed his driver and decided to walk through the downtown streets. He needed fresh air and time to process the strange restlessness that had settled in his chest. As he passed a park, he saw a group of children playing on a colorful playground. All were well-dressed, accompanied by nannies or attentive parents, protected from the real world by a bubble of privilege. His mind flew to Luna and David. Where would they be sleeping tonight? Had they found more food? The image of the girls' bare feet haunted him like a painful memory he couldn't file away with his other business concerns. The next morning, against all his rational instincts, Richard found himself driving toward the neighborhood where he had met the children. He had no specific plan, only an inexplicable need to know if they were okay. He parked his Mercedes 2 blocks from the patisserie and walked through the bustling streets. And feeling ridiculously out of place in his Hugo Boss suit, that's when he saw them. Luna was kneeling in front of a pharmacy window, whispering something to David, who was coughing incessantly. The boy, who couldn't have been more than 5, was visibly feverish, his cheeks flushed and his eyes glazed over. Luna held one of his hands while the other pressed a crumpled piece of paper against the glass. Richard approached discreetly and managed to read the paper. It was a prescription for children's cough syrup. Luna was showing her brother the medicine through the glass as if it were a distant fairy tale. "The pharmacist said it costs $50. He heard Luna whisper to David. "But I'll get it, little brother. You're going to get better, I promise." Richard's heart tightened in a way he had thought impossible. He watched Luna stand up with determination and walk to the nearest trash can, where she began to rummage through the debris for something she could sell or trade. Her movements were methodical, practiced, as if it were a familiar routine. "Excuse me, kids, but you can't loiter in front of the store," said a man in a white coat, likely the pharmacist. "You're bothering the customers." "We're not doing anything wrong," Luna replied, lifting her chin with a dignity that was staggering for her age. "We're just resting." "Well, rest somewhere else. This is a place of business." Richard felt a dull anger rise in his throat. How could an adult be so callous in the face of 2 children in clear need? He took a step forward, but stopped when he saw Luna pick David up with difficulty and walk away without protest. The girl's silent dignity was more powerful than any argument. They settled on a nearby corner, where Luna took 2 pieces of stale bread from a torn plastic bag and shared them with her brother. David could barely chew between coughing fits, but Luna encouraged him with infinite patience, telling him silly stories to make him smile. "Once upon a time, there was a prince who lived in a castle made of clouds," she said, gesturing with her small hands. "And he had a horse that could fly higher than the birds." Richard watched the scene for nearly an hour, hidden behind a pillar. Luna's devotion to her sick brother was something he had never witnessed, not even in his own wealthy family. His parents had always outsourced his care to nannies and governesses, and he had done the same in his later relationships. As the sun began to set, Luna arranged some cardboard she had collected. creating a small, makeshift shelter for the night. David shivered from the cold, and she immediately took off her own jacket, a faded, patched garment, to cover him better. It was in that moment that Richard made a decision that would change everything. He crossed the street with determined steps, stopping in front of the two siblings. Luna recognized him immediately, her eyes lighting up with surprise and gratitude. "The cupcake man," she exclaimed, gently waking David. "Remember him?" "Little brother." David opened his feverish eyes and tried to smile, but another cough racked his small body. Richard knelt before them, and for the first time in years, he allowed his vulnerability to show in his voice. "You're both coming with me now." Luna recoiled instinctively, pulling David closer to her. Her eyes, which moments before had shone with joy at recognizing Richard, now showed a primal distrust he hadn't expected. The girl hugged her brother with a protective force, like a lioness defending her cub from an unknown predator. "We don't go with strangers," she said, her voice small but firm. "My grandma always said that before she left." Richard felt a lump in his throat. Of course, she would be suspicious. An 8-year-old living on the streets had probably learned bitter lessons about adults offering help with ulterior motives. He forced himself to speak more slowly, choosing each word with care. "I'm not a stranger. I'm the cupcake man, remember? I just want to take you somewhere warm, where David can get some medicine for that cough." David was shaken by another violent coughing fit, so strong that his little body trembled. Luna held him tight, whispering words of comfort in his ear, but Richard could see the desperation growing in her eyes. She knew her brother was getting worse, but her determination to protect him didn't waver. "We can manage on our own," Luna insisted, lifting her chin with wounded pride. "We don't need anyone's pity." Those words hit Richard like a slap in the face. Pity. Was that what she saw in his actions? He watched the two siblings, Luna, trying to look strong while her own eyes welled with worry, and David, feverish and weak, but trusting his older sister completely to keep him safe. It's not pity," Richard said softly, kneeling on the cold ground to be at their level. It's because you reminded me of something I had forgotten." "What's that?" Luna asked, still suspicious but slightly curious. Richard hesitated. How could he explain to a child that she had awakened a humanity in him he thought he had lost forever? How could he say that, for the first time in decades, he genuinely cared about someone other than himself? "How important it is to take care of the people you love," he finally answered, his voice huskier than he intended. Luna studied his face for long seconds, as if trying to decipher his true intentions. David coughed again, and this time a few specks of blood dotted his small hand. The fear that flashed in Luna's eyes was like a dagger to Richard's heart. "He's really sick," she murmured, more to herself than to Richard. "I don't know what to do anymore." "Let me help," Richard pleaded, extending his hand slowly. "Please." Luna looked at his outstretched hand, then at David's face, which was growing paler by the second. The internal struggle was visible on her small features, pride and distrust battling against a desperate love for her ailing brother. "If we go with you," she said finally, her voice almost a whisper, "do you promise you won't separate me and David? Do you promise we'll stay together?" "I promise," Richard answered without hesitation, and for the first time, he realized he truly meant it. "You stay together. Always." Luna took a deep breath and, with trembling hands, took Richard's. "Okay, but only because David needs medicine." Richard helped lift David, surprised by how light the boy was. The fever had left his cheeks flushed, but the rest of his face was frighteningly pale. As they walked toward the car, Luna kept one hand firmly on her brother's shirt, as if she feared he might disappear at any moment. "Whoa!" David whispered upon seeing the Mercedes, his feverish eyes widening in awe. "It's just like the cars in the movies." Richard smiled involuntarily. "Want to sit in the front to see all the buttons?" "Can I?" David asked. perking up for the first time since Richard had found them. "He stays with me in the back," Luna interrupted quickly, her distrust still palpable. "We always stay together." Richard nodded, understanding that he would have to earn Luna's trust one step at a time. He adjusted the back seat, set the climate control to a comfortable temperature, and drove carefully through the streets, watching in the rearview mirror as Luna examined every detail of the luxurious interior with a mix of fascination and apprehension. "Where are we going?" she asked when they stopped at the first red light. Richard met her gaze in the rearview mirror. "First, we're going to the hospital to take care of David's cough. After that, well, we'll figure out what's next." Luna nodded slowly, but Richard could see in her eyes that she was already calculating escape routes, memorizing landmarks. She didn't trust him yet. Perhaps she never would completely, but for the love of her brother, she was willing to take the risk. As he drove through the illuminated city streets, Richard wondered what he was getting himself into. His orderly, predictable life had been turned upside down by two children he barely knew, but strangely, for the first time in years, he felt truly alive. What would happen when they got to the hospital? And after? He had no answers, only a growing certainty that he could no longer abandon Luna and David to their fate. St. Jude's Medical Center was one of the most respected institutions in the city, its imposing facade of glass and marble reflecting the status of its usual patients. Richard had contributed generously to its pediatric wing years ago, more out of social obligation than genuine interest. He never imagined he would one day be there carrying an unknown child in his arms. Luna walked beside him with quick steps, her alert eyes taking in every move of the doctors and nurses who bustled through the gleaming corridors. Her small hand was firmly clasped to the shirt of David, who had fallen asleep in Richard's arms during the car ride. "Good evening, Mr. Sterling." The receptionist greeted him, recognizing him immediately. "How can we help you?" "I need urgent care for this child," Richard said, indicating David. "He has a high fever and is coughing up blood." The efficiency that always accompanied the Sterling name kicked in instantly. Within minutes, they were led to an emergency room where Dr. Henry Campos, a renowned pediatrician, began examining David with professional care. "How long has he had these symptoms?" the doctor asked, using his stethoscope to listen to the boy's lungs. Luna looked at Richard uncertainly before answering. "A few days, but it got a lot worse today. And you are?" Dr. Campos raised an eyebrow, noticing for the first time the obvious disparity between the well-dressed businessman and the two clearly destitute children. "I'm a friend of the family," Richard replied, feeling ridiculous for the first time in years. "I found the children and brought them in." The doctor exchanged a meaningful glance with a nurse, who immediately left the room. Richard felt a chill in his stomach, realizing his good intentions were being interpreted with suspicion. "Doctor, is David going to be okay?" Luna asked in a trembling voice, climbing onto a chair to get closer to the gurney where her brother was being examined. "He has early-stage pneumonia," Dr. Campos explained gently. "Nothing that can't be treated with antibiotics and proper care, but I'll need to admit him for a few days for observation." "Admit him?" Luna jumped off the chair, her eyes widening in terror. "No! He can't be alone. I'll stay with him." "Honey, this is a hospital," said the nurse who had returned, accompanied by a middle-aged woman Richard didn't know. "Children can't sleep here unless they're patients." "But I'm responsible for him," Luna protested, her voice rising an octave. "I've always taken care of him." The woman who had entered approached with a professional smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Hello, sweetie. My name is Carla Mendez. I'm a social worker with the hospital. I need to ask you a few questions." Richard saw Luna pale instantly. "What kind of questions? Where are your parents? Who are your legal guardians? Do you have any identification?" Each question was like a direct hit to Luna's defenses. She began to back away toward the gurney where David lay, her eyes desperately searching for an exit. "Our parents died," she said, her voice choked. Udum and our grandma, too. It's just me and David now. I see, Carla said, making notes on a clipboard. And how long have you been living on the street? We don't live on the street, Luna exploded, her cheeks flushing with indignation. We're just looking for a better place. Richard watched the scene unfold with growing despair. He had brought the children here to help, but he was beginning to realize he had opened a bureaucratic Pandora's box that could have terrible consequences. Mr. Sterling, Dr. Campos addressed him discreetly. Could I have a word with you in the hall? In the hallway, out of Luna's earshot, the doctor was direct. Look, Richard, I've known you for years. I know your intentions are good, but these children are clearly wards of the state. We have protocols to follow. What kind of protocols? They'll have to be referred to Child Protective Services. They'll likely be separated. David will go to a foster family that accepts medically fragile children, and Luna to another. It's rare to find homes that will take two siblings together. Separated? Richard felt as if he'd been punched in the gut. But I promised her they would stay together. Richard, you can't make promises you can't keep. These children need specialized care, legal documentation, a formal education. What if I take responsibility for them? Dr. Campos stared at him in surprise. You? Richard, you're not even married. You have no experience with children. And frankly, your history doesn't suggest you're the right kind of person to raise two traumatized children. The doctor's words were like daggers. Richard knew he was right. His life had been built around business, profits, and superficial relationships, but something had changed in him since meeting Luna and David, something fundamental and irreversible. When they returned to the room, they found Luna hugging David, who had woken up and was crying softly. Luna, the boy whispered, I want to go home. We don't have a home anymore, little brother, she answered, her own tears streaming silently. But I'll take care of you, always. Carla Mendez approached Richard. Mr. Sterling, I need you to come with me to answer some questions about how you found these children. Richard looked at Luna, who was staring at him with a mixture of fear and accusation. She had trusted him, and now she felt betrayed. You lied, she murmured. You said we would stay together. Luna, But she had already turned away, focusing all her attention on David. Richard realized he had lost her trust, perhaps forever. And worse, he had put the siblings in a situation where they could be separated just when they needed each other most. As he followed Carla Mendez down the hall, a single question hammered in his mind. How could someone who had built an empire on practical solutions feel so completely lost and powerless? The hospital's social services office smelled of disinfectant and old paperwork. Richard sat in an uncomfortable plastic chair, watching Carla Mendez organize a pile of forms that seemed to multiply before his eyes. Outside, he could hear the distant echo of voices in the hallway, and his heart ached, thinking of Luna and David alone in the emergency room. Mr. Sterling, Carla began, adjusting her reading glasses, I need to understand exactly how you met these children. Your story doesn't fit the usual protocol we see. Richard sighed deeply. How could he explain that a simple cake had completely changed his perspective on life? I found Luna 2 days ago in front of Le Ciel Patisserie. She wanted to trade a pair of old shoes for my cake. And you decided to help her because... I can't explain it, Richard admitted, running a hand through his hair. There was something in her eyes, a determination, a strength I've never seen in anyone. She wasn't begging. She was offering everything she had. Carla made careful notes. Do you have children, Mr. Sterling? No. Are you married? No. Do you have any prior experience with childcare, volunteer work, any qualifications? Each no, Richard uttered, sounded like a hammer striking the coffin of his chances to help the children. He realized how narrow his life had been, focused exclusively on financial goals and social status. Mr. Sterling, Carla leaned forward. You need to understand our concern. A single man, with no experience with children, suddenly appears wanting to take responsibility for 2 abandoned kids. That raises a lot of red flags. Red flags! Richard felt anger rising in his throat. I brought these children here to get medical treatment, and that was very noble of you. But now we have to think about what's best for them in the long run. Just then, a soft knock on the door interrupted them. Dr. Campos entered with a grim expression. Carla, I need to speak with you both. It's about the children's history. Richard felt his stomach drop. What did you find? We were able to access some records through the names Luna provided, the doctor explained, consulting a file. Luna and David Smith did indeed lose their parents in a car accident 8 months ago. They went to live with their maternal grandmother, a Mrs. Hope Smith. And where is the grandmother now? Carla asked. She passed away 6 weeks ago. Heart attack. The problem is, well, the children ran away from the funeral before social services could intervene. Ran away? Richard leaned forward. According to the neighbors, Luna overheard someone say that she and her brother would be separated and placed in different homes. She took David and simply vanished. Richard closed his eyes, imagining the terror Luna must have felt. To lose the last person she loved and then discover she would be separated from her brother, the only family she had left. There's more, Dr. Campos continued. She has already been sought after by 3 different foster families in the last 2 months. All of them gave up. Why? Richard asked, though he suspected the answer. Because she adamantly refuses to be separated from David. In one home, she escaped through a 2nd-story window carrying her brother on her back. In another, she simply stopped eating until they agreed to return them to the shelter. Carla sighed heavily. It's a complicated situation. Luna has developed an extreme protective instinct toward her brother. It's understandable, but it's also problematic for the adoption process. Problematic? Richard shot up from his chair. She's an 8-year-old girl who has lost everything and is fighting to keep the one person she still loves by her side. How is that problematic? Mr. Sterling, you don't understand the complexities of the system, Carla said with forced patience. Families willing to adopt 2 children are rare. Families willing to take on a medically fragile child are even rarer. And Luna, well, she has a history of difficult behavior. Difficult behavior. Richard's voice rose. She's being loyal. She's being impossible, Carla corrected. And it's hurting both her and David's chances of finding suitable homes. Dr. Campos looked at Richard with a gentler expression. Look, Richard, I understand your impulse to help, but these children need stability, therapy, specialized education. They've been through significant trauma, and you think separating them will help with that trauma. It's not ideal, but sometimes we have to accept what's possible instead of what's perfect. Richard sat down again, the weight of reality crushing his naive intentions. What happens now? David will be admitted for 3 days, the doctor explained. During that time, we will contact Child Protective Services. They will evaluate the available options. And Luna? She can stay in the hospital's temporary shelter until we find a permanent solution. Richard imagined Luna alone in a strange room, not knowing if she would see David again, with no one to trust. The image was unbearable. I want to see them, he said, standing up again. Mr. Sterling, Carla interrupted, perhaps it would be best for you to go home. Let the professionals handle the situation. But Richard was already walking toward the door. I made Luna a promise, and I intend to keep it. As he left the office, he knew he had only a few hours before the bureaucratic system swallowed Luna and David whole. He needed a plan, and he needed it fast. But first, he needed to look Luna in the eyes and explain that he hadn't given up on her. The hospital corridor had never seemed so long, and each step echoed like a clock, ticking down the time he had left to keep a family together. When Richard returned to the emergency room, He found a scene that broke his heart. Luna was curled up in a chair next to David's gurney, her small legs drawn up to her chest, creating a protective barrier between herself and the world. Her eyes, red from crying, stared at him with a coldness he had never seen in a child. "Came to say goodbye," she said in a flat voice, as if she had spent every tear she had. "They said they're taking us to different places tomorrow." David, still weak but conscious thanks to the medication, clutched his sister's hand tightly. "Luna, I don't want to go without you." "I know, little brother," she whispered, stroking his hair with infinite tenderness, "but sometimes we don't get to choose." Richard knelt in front of the chair where Luna sat, trying to find words that could undo the damage he had caused. "Luna, I didn't know that. You lied," she interrupted, her voice small but sharp as a blade. "You said we would stay together. You said you would take care of us." "I still want to take care of you. I'm trying to do what?" Luna leaned forward, her eyes blazing with an anger far too old for her years. "You brought us here, knowing they would want to split us up." "Everyone always wants to split us up." Richard felt like he had been punched in the gut. "Luna, I swear I didn't know." "Grown-ups always know," she retorted bitterly. "They just pretend they don't so they don't feel bad." David began to cry silently, his small shoulders shaking. "I want to stay with Luna. I've always stayed with Luna." "And you will," Richard said with a sudden determination that surprised even himself. "I won't let them separate you." Luna stared at him skeptically. "How? You don't even have kids. The lady said you don't know how to take care of children." "Then you can teach me," Richard replied, his voice growing firmer with each word. "You've taken care of each other all this time. You know things I've never learned." "That's a lie," Luna said, but Richard saw a small crack in her armor of distrust. "It's not a lie. You've taken care of David better than any adult I know. You shared your food with him even when you were hungry. You protected him, comforted him, made up stories so he wouldn't be afraid." Luna blinked rapidly, fighting back fresh tears. "Anyone would do that?" "No," Richard said softly. "Not anyone. Most adults I know only think about themselves. You're 8 years old, and you're already more generous than I've been in 42 years. A tense silence filled the room. David had stopped crying and was watching the conversation intently, as if he were watching a game where he didn't fully understand the rules, but knew the outcome would determine his fate. "If you really want to help," Luna said finally, "why can't you just make them let us stay together?" Richard sighed deeply. "Because the adult world has a lot of complicated rules, but I will find a way." "How?" "I don't know yet, but I will." Luna studied his face for a long moment. "Do you have a family?" The question caught Richard off guard. "No, not in the way you mean." "Why not?" "Because I never thought I needed one. I always thought I was stronger on my own." "And now?" Richard looked at the two siblings, saw how David clung to Luna as if she were his anchor in the world, saw how Luna protected him, even knowing it hurt her own chances of being adopted. "Now I know I was wrong." Just then, a nurse entered the room. "I'm sorry, but we need to transfer David to his inpatient room, and the girl needs to go to the social services wing." "No!" Luna shouted, jumping from her chair and clinging to David's gurney. "I'm not leaving him alone." "Luna, please," the nurse said with professional patience. "It's just for tonight. You'll see each other tomorrow." "I don't believe you!" Luna screamed, her last defenses crumbling. "No one ever keeps their promises." David started crying again, reaching his arms out for his sister. "Luna, don't go." "I don't want to, little brother," she sobbed, trying to climb onto the gurney to hug him. "They're making me." Richard couldn't stand it anymore. He stood up abruptly and addressed the nurse. "Let her stay with her brother tonight." "Sir, that's not possible. We have rules." "I'll take full responsibility," Richard said with an authority that made the nurse back down. "She stays. Mr. Sterling, I'll have to call security if you interfere with hospital protocol." Richard glanced at Luna, who was watching him with a mixed expression of hope and desperation. He knew he was about to do something that could complicate the situation even more, but he couldn't just stand by and watch these two siblings be torn apart. "Then call them," he said, crossing his arms. "But Luna stays with David tonight." As the nurse left the room, muttering about irregularities and supervisors, Luna looked at Richard with something akin to gratitude. "You're going to get in trouble because of us," she said quietly. "Probably," Richard admitted, "but some things are worth getting into trouble for." "Like what?" Richard smiled for the first time in hours. "Like keeping a promise." Outside the room, he could hear hurried footsteps approaching. Trouble was coming, and he had no idea how he was going to solve everything. But for now, Luna and David were together, and that was all that mattered. At 5 in the morning, Richard was woken by the insistent vibration of his cell phone. He had spent the night in an uncomfortable chair in the hospital room, watching Luna sleep curled up on David's bed, her small hands still clutching her brother's shirt, even in her sleep. The voice on the other end of the line was familiar and annoyed. "Richard, what the hell is going on?" Helena Vance, his business partner, didn't bother with a greeting. "I just got a call from a Carla Mendez at St. Jude's. She said you're causing trouble over 2 abandoned children." Richard rubbed his eyes, trying to wake up completely. "Helena, I can explain." "I hope you can. Because apparently you spent the night at the hospital refusing to let social workers do their job. It's being interpreted as suspicious and obsessive behavior. They're just kids, Helena. 2 kids who have lost everything. And what does that have to do with you?" Her voice softened, but was still laced with concern. "Richard, I've known you for 15 years. You've never shown an interest in social issues or children. Why now?" That was the question he had been avoiding asking himself. Why now? Why had Luna and David managed to break down walls he had carefully built over decades? "I can't explain it," he admitted, watching Luna stir restlessly in her sleep. "But I can't just walk away and pretend I never met them." "Richard, you need to think rationally. What do you know about raising children, especially traumatized children who've lived on the street?" Before Richard could answer, Luna woke with a start, her eyes immediately searching for David. When she saw he was okay, she breathed a sigh of relief, but then she noticed Richard on the phone. "Is it about us?" she asked, her voice hoarse with sleep. Richard nodded, and Helena must have heard the girl's voice. "Good God, Richard. Are you with them now? In the hospital?" "Helena, I have to go." "Don't you hang up. Listen, this is getting out of hand. You need legal help, and you need it fast. I know someone who can help you." "Who?" "Margaret Olson. She's a lawyer specializing in family law and adoption. She's expensive, but she's the best." Richard jotted down the number Helena gave him, thanked her, and hung up. Luna was watching him intently. Who was that?" "My business partner. She knows a lawyer who can help us." "Help us how?" "Help us find a legal way for you to stay with me." Luna sat up in bed, her eyes widening. "You really want to keep us?" "I do." "Why?" Richard hesitated. How could he explain that she had shown him a form of love he had never known? That David had taught him about vulnerability and trust? That together, they had made him realize the immense void that had always existed in his life? "Because you showed me what a real family is," he said finally. David had woken up during the conversation and was listening with large, hopeful eyes. "Are you going to be our daddy?" The question hit Richard like a lightning bolt. Daddy, a word he had never imagined applying to himself. "If you'll have me," he replied, surprising himself with the firmness in his own voice. It was then that Luna did something that changed everything. She slid off the bed, walked over to Richard, and, without warning, hugged him tightly. "I want to," she whispered against his chest. "I really want to." David held out his small arms from the bed. "Me too." Richard embraced them both, feeling something inside him completely melt away. For the first time in his life, he understood what it meant to love someone more than himself. At that moment, the door opened and Carla Mendez entered, accompanied by a man in a grey suit whom Richard didn't recognize. "Mr. Sterling," Carla said in an official tone, "this is Mr. Robert Mendez from Child Protective Services. We need to talk." Richard stood up, keeping Luna and David close. "Of course." "Mr. Sterling," Mr. Mendez began, "we understand your intention to help, but your conduct over the last 24 hours is concerning. Interfering with hospital protocol, refusing to allow social workers to do their jobs. I just wanted to make sure the children stayed together. And that's admirable. But there are legal processes that must be followed." Richard took a deep breath. It was now or never. "Sir, I would like to begin the legal process to adopt Luna and David." The silence that followed was deafening. Carla and Mr. Mendez exchanged meaningful glances. "Mr. Sterling," Mr. Mendez said finally, "the adoption process is complex and lengthy, especially for an inexperienced single man. It can take months, even years. And in the meantime, the children will be placed in temporary foster homes. Together, that would be difficult to guarantee." Richard looked at Luna, who was staring at him with a mixed expression of hope and terror. He made the most important decision of his life. "And then I'll get married." Everyone in the room stared at him in disbelief. "Mr. Sterling," Carla said slowly, "you can't just get married to facilitate an adoption. That would be fraudulent." "It wouldn't be fraudulent if I married someone who also wants to adopt these children." "And who would that be?" Richard smiled, a crazy but possible idea taking shape in his mind. "My best friend, Helena Vance. She's a psychologist, has experience with children, is financially stable." Luna tugged on his shirt. "You're getting married for us. I'll do whatever it takes to keep you with me," he said, kneeling to be at her level. "That's a real promise." Mr. Mendez sighed deeply. "Mr. Sterling, even if you were married tomorrow, there would still be psychological evaluations, home studies, adjustment periods." "How long?" "At least 6 months." Richard looked at Luna and David. 6 months was an eternity for 2 children who had already lost everything, but it was better than the alternative. "Then let's start today," he said with determination. Luna smiled for the first time since they had arrived at the hospital. A small seed of hope had been planted, and Richard would do anything to see it grow. 3 days later, Richard found himself in the impeccable office of Margaret Olson, a woman in her 50s with grey hair, tied in a severe bun, and eyes that seemed to see right through people. The lawyer had spent the last 40 minutes reviewing the situation with the clinical efficiency of a surgeon analyzing a complex case. "Mr. Sterling," she said, closing the file, "I'm going to be blunt with you. This is one of the most complicated cases I've seen in my 20-year career." Richard felt his stomach sink. "Why?" "First, you're a 42-year-old single man with no prior experience with children. Second, these kids have a history of significant trauma and behaviors the system deems difficult. Third, Luna has already run away from 3 prior placement attempts. But doesn't that prove she needs to stay with her brother? To us, yes. To the system, it proves she's a flight risk." Ms. Olson sighed. "The U.S. adoption system prioritizes traditional families, young, married couples, preferably without biological children, who want infants or young children with no complications. And the idea of marrying Helena, it would help, but it's not a magic bullet. You'd both have to undergo individual and couples psychological evaluations, prove the marriage is genuine and not a sham to facilitate the adoption." Richard ran his hands through his hair. "Miss Olson, I have to be honest. Helena has been my best friend for 15 years, but we've never had a romantic relationship. That complicates things. The evaluators are trained to spot marriages of convenience. So what do you suggest?" The lawyer leaned back in her chair, studying Richard carefully. "Tell me your real motivation. Why these specific children? Why now? Richard hesitated, then decided to be completely honest. Luna looked me in the eye and offered me everything she had for a piece of cake for her brother. In 42 years, I have never seen such genuine selflessness. And David, he trusts her completely, without question. They showed me what unconditional love is. And what can you offer them that other families can't? Financial resources, stability, a quality education? Richard paused, realizing how cold his answer sounded. No, that's not all. I can offer understanding. I also grew up feeling alone, even with my parents around. I know what it's like to feel like you have to make it on your own in the world. Miss Olson made careful notes. That's a better answer. Now, on to the practical matter. Where will the children stay during this process? Can they stay with me? Not officially, but we can try to get temporary custody with supervised visits. It would be a first step. Supervised visits. A social worker would come to your home regularly to assess how you're all adjusting. It's invasive, but necessary. Just then, Richard's cell phone rang. It was Helena. "Excuse me?" he said to the lawyer before answering. "Helena? Richard, where are you? Luna and David have been asking for you for hours. They think you've given up on them." Richard's heart sank. "I'm at the lawyer's office. I'll be back in an hour." Lawyer: "Helena, I need to talk to you about something important, something that could change your life." There was a long pause. "Does this have to do with the kids?" "It has everything to do with the kids." "All right. But hurry up. Luna hasn't eaten anything today, and David keeps asking if you're coming back for them." Richard hung up and looked at Ms. Olson. "I need to get back to the hospital. The kids are worried." "Mr. Sterling, before you go, I need you to understand something. This process will be long, expensive, and emotionally devastating. There will be moments when you'll question if it's worth it. The evaluators will dig into every aspect of your life. They will question your motives, your ability, your sanity, and in the end, even if you do everything right, there's still a chance we won't succeed. The system may decide it's better for the children to be in separate homes." Richard stood up, adjusting his suit. "Ms. Olson, 3 days ago, I was a man who only cared about profits and investments. Today, I'm willing to completely change my life for 2 children I barely know. If that doesn't prove it's worth trying, I don't know what would." The lawyer smiled for the first time since he'd arrived. "That's the attitude we need to maintain. We'll start with the petition for temporary custody. I need you to prepare your home, to receive the children, and for the social workers, visits." "What does that mean?" "Separate bedrooms for each child, appropriate furniture, toys, books, clothes, and most importantly, proof that you can provide a safe and loving environment." When Richard left the lawyer's office, his head was spinning with the complexity of everything he needed to do. But one thing was clear. Luna and David were waiting for him, and he couldn't let them down again. On his way to the hospital, he stopped at a toy store and bought a teddy bear for David and a puzzle for Luna. It wasn't much, but it was a start. When he arrived at the hospital room, he found Luna sitting in a chair next to David's bed, telling the same story of the prince in the clouds he'd heard before. But this time, when she saw him, her eyes truly lit up. "You came back," she said, jumping from her chair. "I promised I would," Richard replied, hugging her, "and I always keep my promises." As he handed the gifts to the children, Richard realized he was crossing a line from which there was no return. He was no longer just a wealthy businessman trying to help 2 needy kids. He was a man who had found his family, and he would do anything to protect it. Richard Sterling's penthouse apartment had always been a symbol of his success. Italian marble floors, designer furniture, carefully placed contemporary art. Now, looking at the space through the eyes of a potential father, he realized how cold and unsuitable it all seemed for children. "Are you sure about this?" Helena asked for the 10th time, following him through the rooms as he jotted down a growing list of necessary changes. "Richard, This apartment costs $3 million. You're going to turn it into a family home. I have to, he answered, measuring what would be Luna's room. The social worker is going to assess whether it's an appropriate environment for children. Helena sat down on the white leather sofa, watching her friend with a mix of admiration and concern. I've never seen you like this. So, determined about something that doesn't involve money. Richard stopped measuring and looked at her. Helena, I need to ask you something, and I want you to be completely honest. I always am. Will you marry me? Helena nearly choked on the coffee she was sipping. What? Not a real marriage, Richard quickly clarified, but a legal marriage that would help us adopt Luna and David together. The lawyer said it would increase our chances. Helena was silent for a long moment, processing what she had heard. Richard, you're asking me to marry you for 2 children you've known for a week. I am. And if I say no, then I'll try to adopt them on my own, even knowing it will be harder. Helena stood up and walked to the window overlooking the city. You love them, don't you? The question caught Richard off guard. Love was a word he rarely used, and always in the context of material things. But thinking about Luna and David, there was no other word to describe what he felt. I do, he admitted. More than I thought it was possible to love anyone, even though they're not your blood. Helena, blood doesn't make a family. Luna has taken better care of David than many biological parents take care of their children. She's 8 years old and she already understands what unconditional love means. Helena turned to face him. And you, do you understand? I'm learning. Would marrying me just be a piece of paper to you? Richard hesitated. You've been my best friend for 15 years. I trust you more than anyone. If I had to choose someone to raise these children with me, it would be you. That's not an answer. It's the only honest answer I can give right now. Helena sighed deeply. I need to meet these children first. If I'm going to consider this insanity, I need to understand why they're so special. 2 hours later, they were at the hospital. Luna was helping David put together the puzzle Richard had brought, her infinite patience clear in the way she guided her brother's small hands. Luna, David, Richard said, I want to introduce you to my best friend, Helena. Luna looked up, immediately wary. Hi, she said politely, but kept her distance. Helena knelt beside the bed. Hi, Luna. Richard has told me a lot about you. Told you what? That you're very brave and take great care of your brother. Luna didn't respond, but Richard saw her features relax slightly. Helena is a psychologist, Richard explained. She helps kids who have been through tough times. Like us, David asked with curiosity. Just like you, Helena confirmed softly. Can I help with the puzzle? Over the next hour, Richard watched Helena interact with the children. She didn't force intimacy or make empty promises. She was simply present, listening to their stories, laughing at their childish jokes, offering help when needed. She's nice, Luna whispered to Richard when Helena went to get some water. You like her. She don't talk to me like I'm too little to understand things. When Helena returned, David was dozing and Luna had moved closer to Richard, resting her head on his shoulder. Luna, Helena said softly, can I ask you something? Okay. What do you want more than anything in the world? Luna didn't hesitate. For me and David to stay together forever. And for someone to really want us, not because they feel sorry for us. And what if I told you that Richard and I are thinking about being a family with you? Luna's eyes widened. You two? Together? Maybe. If that's what you both want. Luna looked from Helena to Richard, then back to Helena. Do you guys like each other? We like each other as friends, Helena answered honestly. But we're still figuring out if we can like each other in other ways, too. And what if you can't? Then we'll find another way to make this work. The important thing is that you two stay together and stay safe. Luna was quiet for several minutes, processing this. Finally, she asked her, can I think about it? Of course, said Richard. It's a very important decision. When they left the hospital, Helena was quiet. Richard waited until they were in the car to ask, So, they're special, Helena admitted. Especially Luna. There's a strength in her that's astonishing for a child who's been through what she has. And I understand why you love them. Helena looked at him. Richard, if we do this, it can't just be a convenient arrangement. Those children have already lost so much. They deserve parents who are completely committed. Are you saying yes? I'm saying I'll try. Let's see if we can make this work. All of us together. Richard felt a wave of relief mixed with anxiety. He now had a partner on the most important journey of his life, but he also knew the real challenges were just beginning. Thank you, Helena. I don't know how to thank you. Don't thank me yet. First, let's see if we can convince the system that we're a real family. As they drove home, Richard realized his life had become completely unpredictable. But for the first time, that didn't scare him. It thrilled him. 2 weeks later, Richard's apartment had been transformed from a bachelor pad into something that was beginning to resemble a family home. Luna's room was painted a soft lilac with a small bed covered in a floral comforter. David's room, in shades of blue and green, had shelves filled with children's books and a mobile of airplanes that Helena had picked out. But all the preparation in the world could not have readied Richard for the first visit from the social worker. Ms. Carmen Rodriguez arrived promptly at 9 a.m., carrying a thick file and an unreadable expression. She was a woman in her 40s, with dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail and eyes that seemed to catalogue every detail of her surroundings. "Mr. Sterling," she said, shaking his hand with professional firmness, "I'm responsible for the home environment evaluation for the temporary custody of Luna and David Smith." "Please come in," Richard said, trying to sound confident despite his nerves. Helena stood beside him, dressed casually but elegantly, trying to project the image of a devoted future wife. Ms. Rodriguez started with the basics: safety measures, cleaning supplies locked up, medications out of reach, proper window locks. Richard had prepared everything meticulously, but she found questions he hadn't considered. "Do the outlets have covers?" she asked, kneeling to check. "Yes, all of them. And the knives in the kitchen, locked in this cabinet." She made careful notes. "But tell me about your daily routine, Mr. Sterling. How do you plan to balance your work with the children's care?" I plan to adjust my hours, work from home more. And Ms. Vance," she turned to Helena, "what will your role be?" Helena took a breath. "I'm a child psychologist, so I can offer specialized emotional support for Luna and David. I also plan to reduce my caseload to be more present." "Do you have definite wedding plans?" Richard and Helena exchanged a quick glance. "Soon," Richard said. "We're organizing a simple ceremony." Miss Rodriguez made more notes. "And how long have you been in a romantic relationship?" The silence that followed was a few seconds too long. "We've been friends for a very long time," Helena said finally. "The romantic relationship is more recent." Mrs. Rodriguez's eyebrows rose almost imperceptibly. "I see. And when did you discover you wanted to adopt these specific children?" "When Richard met them," Helena replied. "He told me about them. I met them, and we decided we wanted to build a family together." "Interesting," the social worker murmured. "In my experience, couples who decide to adopt usually spend months, sometimes years, discussing the possibility. You made this decision very quickly." Richard felt sweat on his forehead. "Sometimes you just know when something is right." She continued her inspection, checking the children's rooms, the bathroom, the play area. Everything was perfect, perhaps too perfect. "Mr. Sterling," she said, stopping at the door of Luna's room, "where are the used toys?" "I'm sorry. Everything in here is new. New bed, new toys, new clothes. For a child who has lived on the street, this can be overwhelming. Children need familiar objects, things with a history." Richard realized his mistake. In his rush to create the perfect environment, He had forgotten that Luna and David had their own history, their own belongings, even if they were few. "They have a few things at the hospital," he said. "A plastic bag with some clothes, some personal items. Those things should be here, Mrs. Rodriguez said, making a note that seemed particularly important. Children need continuity, not a brand new life that erases their past. The visit continued for 2 hours. Every question seemed to have a hidden trap. Every answer opened the door for more questions. When Ms. Rodriguez finally prepared to leave, Richard felt as though he had failed a test whose rules he didn't fully understand. "Thank you for your time," she said at the door. "I'll be sending my preliminary report to Ms. Olson and to Child Protective Services." "And when will we know the result?" Helena asked. "In a few days. But I must say, there are issues that need to be addressed." After she left, Richard collapsed onto the sofa. "We failed, didn't we?" "I don't know," Helena said, sitting beside him. "But I think she's right about one thing. We're trying to create a perfect life for Luna and David, when what they really need is a place where they can be themselves." "What do you mean?" "I mean, maybe we should be asking them what they want in their rooms, what colors they like, what toys they'd want. We're planning for them without them." Richard realized Helena was right. "Let's go to the hospital," he said, standing up. "Let's get their things and ask them what they want their new home to be like." On the way to the hospital, Richard reflected on how he had approached the whole situation like a business project. Identify the problem, create a solution, implement it efficiently. But Luna and David weren't a project. They were two small people with their own feelings, fears, hopes, and opinions. When they arrived at the hospital room, they found Luna teaching David to draw with the colored pencils Helena had brought on her previous visit. "Hi," Luna said, smiling when she saw them. "Did you come to get us?" "Not yet," Richard said, sitting on the bed. "But we came to get your opinions on something very important." "What?" "What you want your rooms to look like in our house." Luna stared at him in surprise. "We get to choose." "Of course you do. It's your house, too." For the first time, Luna smiled with a genuine, uncomplicated joy. "Really? Can I have my things from Grandma in my room?" "What things from your grandma?" "There's a doll she made for me, and a notebook where she wrote down recipes. They're in the bag." Richard looked at the torn plastic bag in the corner of the room. The children's only connection to their past life, which he had planned to replace with better things. "Of course you can," he said, finally understanding. "Good, and we'll make sure they have a special place." When they left the hospital that night, carrying Luna and David's small bag of belongings, Richard knew they had learned a valuable lesson. Building a family wasn't about having the right things or the perfect environment. It was about making children feel like they belonged, history and all. The phone call came on a rainy Monday, 3 weeks after the social worker's visit. Richard was reviewing contracts when Margaret Olson called, her voice carrying a gravity that made his stomach drop immediately. "I need to see you in my office today, Richard, and bring Helena." "Is this about the social worker's report?" "Among other things." 3 o'clock. The lawyer's tone left no room for questions. Richard cancelled his meetings and called Helena, who immediately sensed the urgency in his voice. In the office, Ms. Olson wasted no time on pleasantries. Ms. Rodriguez's report was problematic. Richard felt as if he'd been punched. "In what way?" "She questions the authenticity of your relationship, the speed with which you decided to adopt, and most of all, your true motivation, Richard." "My motivation?" She suggests it could be an issue of ego, of wanting to save children to feel good about yourself, that you may not fully comprehend the challenges of raising traumatized children. Helena leaned forward. "And there's more, isn't there?" "Unfortunately, yes. Someone has filed an anonymous complaint suggesting that Richard has inappropriate intentions toward the children." The silence that followed was deafening. Richard felt the world spin. "What?" His voice came out as a hoarse whisper. "It's a serious accusation, Richard." Child Protective Services is obligated to investigate, but that's absurd. Helena exploded. Who would do such a thing? Anonymous tips are more common than you'd like to think. Sometimes it's genuine concern, sometimes it's sabotage. Richard tried to process the information. Sabotage? Who would want to sabotage me? People who think needy children shouldn't go to wealthy families. People who disapprove of single men adopting. Sometimes even employees within the system who think they're protecting the children. And what does this mean for Luna and David? Miss Yolson's expression grew even darker. It means they will be immediately transferred to a shelter until the investigation is complete. No contact will be permitted during that period. For how long? It could be weeks. It could be months. Richard stood abruptly, walking to the window. Outside, the rain was falling heavily, as if the sky itself were weeping. They're going to think I abandoned them. Again. Richard, Helena touched his shoulder gently. We're going to fight this. With what? They've already decided I'm guilty before even giving me a chance to defend myself. Ms. Olson consulted her papers. There's a hearing scheduled for Friday. Until then, the children will be at the St. Clair's shelter. Can I at least explain to them what's happening? No, any contact could be interpreted as an attempt to influence a witness. Richard spun around. Witnesses, they're 8 and 5 years old. In the legal system, they are the primary witnesses regarding your conduct. My conduct has been impeccable. I have never, ever, I know, the lawyer said softly, but now we have to prove it. Helena took Richard's hand. Well, what do we need to do? Gather evidence, character witnesses, records of your interactions with the children, and most importantly, find out who made this complaint. How? Leave that to me. I have some contacts who can help. That afternoon, Richard drove to the hospital where Luna and David were still staying. David had developed a secondary infection that had extended his stay. He knew he couldn't speak to them, but he had to see them one last time before they were taken. From the hallway, through the room's window, he saw Luna playing with the doll her grandmother had made, while David colored in a book. They looked so small, so vulnerable. How could anyone suggest he would harm them? It was then he saw Carla Mendez, the social worker, approaching the room with 2 uniformed CPS officers. No, Richard murmured, his heart breaking. He watched Luna look up as the adults entered the room. He saw her expression change from curiosity to confusion, then to panic. She immediately threw herself over David, as she always did when she sensed danger. Richard couldn't hear what was being said, but he could see Luna shaking her head vigorously, clinging to her brother. David started to cry, and Luna yelled something that made the adults step back. That's when she looked through the window and saw him in the hall. For a moment, their eyes met. Luna screamed, "Richard!" and ran to the window, banging on the glass with her small hands. David followed, both of them crying out for him. Richard moved to the window, placing his palm against the glass where Luna was desperately hitting it. Tears streamed down her face, and for the first time since he'd met her, she looked utterly defeated. "Don't leave," she cried, her voice muffled by the glass. "Please, don't leave me." One of the officers approached the window and pulled the blinds shut, cutting off their connection. Richard stood there, listening to the desperate cries of the children from the other side of the wall, completely powerless. Carla Mendez came out of the room a few minutes later and found him still there, tears streaming silently down his face. "Mr. Sterling, you shouldn't be here." "They think I've abandoned them," he said, his voice choked. "Mr. Sterling, they already lost everything once. Now they're losing it all over again, and this time it's my fault. The system is just doing its job." Richard stared at her with a bitterness she had never seen before. The system is destroying 2 children who've already been destroyed enough. He turned away from the window, knowing that every second he stood there only made it worse. But as he walked down the hall, he could hear Luna screaming his name, her voice growing more distant but no less desperate. When he reached his car, Richard completely broke down. For the first time in decades, he wept like a child, his grief echoing through the empty hospital parking garage. He had promised to protect Luna and David. Instead, he had put them in a situation even worse than life on the streets. And now, he didn't know if he would ever get the chance to fix it. The hearing was set for 9 a.m. on a sunny Friday, a cruel contrast to the grim weight on Richard's heart. He had spent the last 4 nights sleepless, replaying every interaction he'd had with Luna and David, trying to understand how his pure intentions could have been so twisted. Margaret Olson met him on the courthouse steps, carrying 2 thick binders and a determined expression he hadn't seen before. "We found out who made the complaint," she said without preamble. Richard's heart hammered in his chest. "Who?" "Sonia Fisher, a retired CPS employee. She has a history of filing complaints against single men trying to adopt. Apparently, she's on a personal crusade based on a traumatic experience from decades ago." "And how does that help us?" "Because we've documented a pattern of obsessive behavior. 6 men in the last 5 years, all cleared after lengthy investigations. All of the children were harmed by the process." They entered the building, and Richard smelled the familiar scent of old paper and disinfectant that seemed to permeate every government building. His mind flew to Luna and David. How were they? Were they being treated well at the shelter? Were they scared? "Is Helena bringing the witnesses?" he asked. "Yes, Dr. Campos from the hospital. 3 staff members who witnessed your interactions with the children. And she smiled for the first time in days. A surprise." Before Richard could ask about the surprise, Helena appeared down the hall with a small group of people. Richard recognized the doctor and a few nurses, but there was an elderly woman he had never seen before. "Richard," Helena said, "I'd like you to meet Mrs. Maria Santos, Luna and David's grandmother's neighbor." The woman, who must have been in her 70s, approached with a firm step and shook Richard's hand with surprising strength. "So, you're the man who wants to take care of those children?" "I am," Richard answered, confused as to why she was there. "Mrs. Hope told me about you before she passed." Richard stared at her in disbelief. "What do you mean?" "She always had a way of seeing things, you know. Said a man with a wounded heart would find the children, and that he would need to learn how to truly love to save them all. Mrs. Hope couldn't have known me. She died before I met Luna and David." Mrs. Santos smiled with the wisdom of a long life. "She didn't need to know you were coming. She said Luna would teach this man what a real family was, and that he would give the children what they needed most. And what is it they need most? Someone who will never give up on them." Just then, a bailiff called them for the hearing. The room was smaller than Richard expected, with a long table where a single judge sat. On the other side, Carla Mendez and an attorney for CPS arranged their documents. And there, in 2 small chairs near the judge's bench, were Luna and David. Richard's heart shattered seeing them. Luna was wearing clothes that were clearly not hers, too big and in faded colors. Her eyes, usually so vibrant, looked dull. David was clinging to her arm, obviously frightened by the formal setting. When Luna saw him, her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't move. Richard could see the internal struggle on her face. She wanted to run to him, but she had learned not to trust anymore. "All rise," the bailiff began, and the judge, a gray-haired man with a solemn voice, started the proceedings. "Dean, we are here to evaluate the suitability of Richard Sterling for the temporary custody of Luna and David Smith, as well as to investigate the allegations made against him." The CPS attorney spoke first, presenting the complaint and questioning the speed of Richard's decision to adopt, his lack of experience, the nature of his relationship with Helena. "Your Honor," the attorney said, "we have a single man with no experience who rashly decided to adopt 2 traumatized children. This raises legitimate questions about his true motivations." Then it was Margaret Olson's turn. "Your Honor, We would like to present evidence that this complaint is part of a pattern of systematic harassment by a former employee of the system. She presented the documentation on Sonia Fisher, showing the repeated, baseless complaints. Then she called the witnesses. Dr. Campos testified about Richard's care for the children at the hospital, his genuine concern, his respectful interactions. The nurses confirmed they never saw anything inappropriate, but it was Mrs. Santos who changed everything. Your Honor, she said, her voice clear and firm, these children have lost everything twice in their lives, first their parents, then their grandmother. But they never lost one thing, their love for each other. She pointed to Luna and David, and to look at them. See how Luna protects her brother, even now, even when she's afraid. That girl has her grandmother's heart, strong, brave, and full of love. The judge leaned forward. And what is your opinion of Mr. Sterling? My opinion is that Hope was right. This man didn't know he was looking for a family until he found these children, and these children were waiting for someone who would love them exactly as they are. Then, something unexpected happened. Luna stood up from her chair. Can I talk? She asked, her voice small but determined. The judge hesitated, then nodded. You may, dear. Luna looked directly at Richard, then at the judge. I know everyone wants to know if Richard is a good person, and I'm going to tell you how I know he is. She took a deep breath. The first day, he could have just given me the cake and left. But he came back and bought more food. At the hospital, when they said me and David would be separated, he promised he wouldn't let them. And when the lady said I couldn't stay with David, he fought for me to stay. Her tears began to fall, but her voice remained steady. He never lied to me, not even when the truth was hard, and he never, ever made me feel scared. Luna looked directly at the judge. You want to know if he's a good person? I can tell you. A good person is someone who remembers your birthday even when you forget. Someone who reads you stories even when they're tired. Someone who cries when you cry, even if they're a grown-up. The courtroom was utterly silent. And you want to know why I know he will never give up on us? Because he's here. Even when everyone said bad things about him, even when it was hard, he came to fight for us. Luna turned to Richard, and for the first time in a week, she truly smiled. I want to go home with him. The judge watched Luna for a long moment after her speech, his eyes reflecting a wisdom gained from decades of dealing with broken families. The silence in the room was almost tangible, broken only by the soft sound of David sobbing quietly as he held his sister's hand. Luna, the judge said in a kind voice, you can return to your seat, dear. But before she moved, David stood up too, his small legs barely holding him steady. I want to talk too, he said, his voice choked with emotion. The judge smiled gently. Of course, David. What would you like to tell us? Richard made my sister smile again, David said, his words catching between tears. After Grandma left, Luna only cried at night. She thought I didn't know, but I knew. Richard's heart broke imagining Luna, just a child herself, trying to be strong by day and falling apart alone in the dark. But after he came, David continued, she started telling happy stories again. Stories about our new house, about how we'd have our own rooms, but could visit each other whenever we wanted. The boy looked directly at Richard, and he never yelled at me, not even when I spilled juice on his clothes. Real daddies don't yell when you have an accident. The judge leaned forward. And you would like Richard to be your daddy? I would like him and Aunt Helena to be our family, David replied, with a certainty that was surprising for his age. Because family is when people worry about you, even when you're far away. The two children returned to their seats, but the impact of their words resonated through the room. Richard saw tears in the eyes of several people present, including the judge himself. Mr. Sterling, the judge said, addressing him directly, would you please rise? Richard obeyed, his legs trembling slightly. This court has heard testimony regarding your character, your intentions, and most importantly, the impact you have had on the lives of these two children. We have also carefully reviewed the allegations made against you." The judge paused, consulting his papers. "Regarding the accusations of inappropriate behavior, this court finds them to be completely baseless. The evidence presented shows a pattern of harassment on the part of the complainant, not any impropriety on your part." Richard felt a wave of relief, but he still didn't dare breathe completely. "As for the matter of adoption," the judge continued, "this court recognizes that exceptional situations sometimes require exceptional solutions. We rarely see such a genuine connection between prospective adoptive parents and children." He looked at Luna and David, then back at Richard. "Therefore, I am granting temporary custody of Luna and David Smith to Mr. Richard Sterling on the condition that he immediately begins the legal proceedings for permanent adoption." The room erupted in murmurs of relief and approval. Richard felt his legs give way, and Helena had to grab his arm. "Furthermore," the judge said, raising his voice over the murmurs, "I am recommending that disciplinary action be taken against Ms. Sonia Fisher for abuse of the system and causing unnecessary trauma to minors." Luna leapt from her chair and ran toward Richard, who knelt to receive her in his arms. David soon joined them, and the three of them clung to each other in the middle of the courtroom, tears of relief and joy mingling between them. "You're coming home with me," Richard whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "Forever?" Luna asked. "Forever." Helena joined the hug, wrapping her arms around the newly formed family. "We're all going home together." Margaret Olson approached with a radiant smile. "Congratulations, Richard, but we still have paperwork to sign." Over the next 2 hours, Richard signed more documents than he had for any business deal, but each signature brought him closer to making official what he already knew in his heart. Luna and David were his children, and he was their father. Carla Mendez approached as they were preparing to leave. "Mr. Sterling, I owe you an apology. Allowing this situation to escalate as it did was an error in my judgment." Richard looked at her for a moment, then extended his hand. "You were trying to protect the children. I can't fault you for that." When they finally left the courthouse, the afternoon sun bathed the city in a golden light. Luna held one of Richard's hands, David the other, while Helena walked beside them. "Daddy Richard?" David said, trying out the words. "Can I call Helena Mommy Helena?" Helena knelt beside the boy. "Only if you want to, sweetheart. But know that no matter what you call me, I will love you as if you were born from my own heart." "And me?" Luna asked. "Can I call you Mum too?" "I would be honored," Helena replied, hugging both children. When they arrived at the apartment, which Richard now thought of as home, Luna ran to the room they had decorated together. The grandmother's doll was in its place of honor on the shelf, next to the new books and toys she had chosen herself. "It's just like I dreamed," she said, spinning in the middle of the room. David tested his new bed, bouncing on it with the carefree joy only children possess. "It's as soft as a cloud." That night, after a simple dinner where they laughed more than they had in weeks, Richard was tucking the children in when Luna held his hand. "Daddy, Richard." "Yes, my love. Thank you for not giving up on us." Richard kissed her forehead gently. "Thank you for teaching me what it means to truly love." "Grandma was right," Luna murmured, already sleepy. "She said an angel would look after us. She just didn't know the angel would be you." As he watched Luna and David fall asleep in their own rooms, in their own home, Richard reflected on how completely his life had changed. 6 weeks ago, he was a wealthy but empty man, focused only on accumulating more wealth. Today, he was the father of 2 extraordinary children who had taught him that true success isn't measured in dollars, but in smiles, hugs, and the certainty of being loved unconditionally. The journey had been difficult, painful at times, but every obstacle had been worth it to arrive at this moment. A family, united, whole, and finally home. 6 months later, on a golden spring afternoon, Richard Sterling pushed open the glass door of Le Ciel Pâtisserie, accompanied by 2 beaming children. Luna wore a flowery blue dress she had picked out herself, her hair shining in the sun and held back with a small floral headband. David, dapper in his miniature suit, held a bouquet of daisies with the seriousness of someone on an important mission. "Daddy," Luna whispered, tugging on his suit jacket, "are you sure Mommy Helena is going to like the surprise?" Richard smiled, kneeling to be at her level. "I'm sure, sweetheart. After all, it was you and David's idea to throw this party." The patisserie had been transformed for the occasion. Gold and white balloons decorated the space, and a special table was set with the 3-tiered cake Luna had helped choose. It wasn't just a wedding reception, it was a family celebration. Helena arrived a few minutes later, accompanied by Dr. Campos, Mrs. Santos, and a few other friends who had become part of their unlikely story. When she saw the decorations and realized the children had organized everything, her eyes filled with tears. "Surprise, Mommy!" Luna and David shouted in unison, running to hug her. "You did all of this for me?" Helena asked, her voice thick with emotion. "For us," Luna corrected wisely, "for our whole family." The ceremony was simple and perfect. Richard and Helena exchanged vows they had written together, promises that included not only their commitment to each other, but to the 2 children who had brought their destinies together. Luna and David were the ring-bearers, their smiles lighting up the entire patisserie. "I, Helena," she said, looking into Richard's eyes, "promise to be your partner on this journey of building a family based on love, patience, and understanding. I promise to love Luna and David as if they were born from my own heart, because in so many ways they were." Richard took her hands, feeling the sweet weight of responsibility and love. "I, Richard, promise to be the man the 3 of you deserve. I promise that our family will always be a safe place, where love comes before pride, where problems are solved together, and where every day is a new chance to show how much we love each other." When they kissed, sealing not just their union but the official birth of a family, Luna and David cheered and began tossing rose petals they had secretly stored in their pockets. The party that followed was unlike any social event Richard had ever hosted. There were no pompous speeches or business networking. Instead, there was genuine laughter, shared stories, and the soft music of a family celebrating its own existence. Mrs. Santos approached Richard during the party, her eyes shining with deep satisfaction. "Mrs. Hope would be proud," she said. "The children found exactly what they needed. And I found what I didn't even know I was looking for," Richard replied, watching Luna teach David how to dance in the small, clear space in the shop. "You know," Mrs. Santos said, "there's something Hope used to say about family." "What was that?" "That family isn't about having the same blood, it's about having the same heart." Later, as they were cutting the cake, the same red velvet flavor that had started this entire journey, Luna made a toast with her small glass of grape juice. "I want to thank everyone who is here," she said, with the gravity of an adult but the sweetness of a child. "Especially Daddy Richard, who taught me that truly good people exist, and Mommy Helena, who taught me that moms don't have to give birth to love their children from the bottom of their hearts." She looked at David, who stood beside her with chocolate on his face. "And to my brother David, who taught me that no matter what happens, we always have each other." "And what else, Luna?" Helena asked softly. Luna thought for a moment, then smiled with that precocious wisdom that defined her. "Dan, to Grandma Hope, who is in heaven watching over us. She always said that miracles happen when you least expect them, in ways you can't even imagine." As everyone raised their glasses, adults with champagne, children with juice, Richard looked around the transformed patisserie. 6 months ago, this place had represented just another stop in his empty routine. Today, It was the cradle of his family, the place where it all began with a simple act of generosity. At the end of the afternoon, as they were heading home, all together in the same car, Luna and David chattering excitedly in the back, Helena beside him organizing the day's photos, Richard drove past the corner where he had first met the children. "Pull over," he said suddenly. "Why?" Helena asked. "I just want to see something." He parked in the same spot where Luna had tried to trade old shoes for a piece of cake. The lamppost was still there. The sidewalk was still the same, but everything had completely changed. "Was it here?" Luna asked, recognizing the spot. "It was here," Richard confirmed. Luna got out of the car and walked to the lamppost, touching it gently as if it were a monument. "It's weird to think our whole family started right here." "It's not weird," Helena said, joining her. "It's magical." David ran up to them, holding something in his hand. "Look what I found." It was a pair of small, worn children's shoes, abandoned near the trash can. For a moment, they all stood in silence, remembering how it had all begun. "Do you think there's a kid around here who needs help?" Luna asked, her eyes already scanning the street's shadows. Richard smiled, recognizing in her the same impulse of generosity that had changed his life. "Not today, my love, but we'll always be watching. Always ready to help when someone needs it." As they walked back to the car, Luna took Richard's hand. "Daddy, can I ask you something? Always. If you could go back in time and never have met me that day, would you?" Richard stopped walking and knelt before her, looking directly into the dark eyes that had changed his life forever. "Luna Montenegro Sterling," he said, using the full name she had officially adopted the week before. If I had to choose between all the wealth in the world and you and David, I would choose you 1,000,000 times over. You didn't just change my life, you gave me a life worth living." As they drove home in the soft evening light, Richard reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought them here. It had started with a piece of cake and a pair of old shoes, and it had turned into the greatest treasure a man could ever possess, a family bound together by true love. Le Ciel Patisserie faded behind them, but the sweetness born there remained, growing each day in shared smiles, spontaneous hugs, and the certainty that they had found each other exactly when they needed to most. And so, on a golden afternoon, an extraordinary family headed home, knowing that the best chapters of their lives were still to be written.